All right. But to actually create a software, how do you actually do it? So you will have to learn on the programming language. So we have to learn on giving instructions. But there are so many languages that we have. Okay, we have Python. So probably some of you would say, "Hey, why you are not, using a Python?" Python's okay is a trend. Okay, if you are rather interested in data science, so probably you would need to know about Python or even R language. Okay, so these are the common language, which is actually for in data analysis. When you learn about the C++ or Java, so these are the language which is actually for embedded systems. So we would say that different kind of a language, you have different kind of usage, but the concepts basically is the same. It's just that you need to know and get yourself familiarized with the language itself. So it's just like when you speak Chinese, you need to know the words. Okay, you need to know like 有名词，有成语或者是什么其他的. So you have to get familiarized with Chinese because when you're talking to maybe a Chinese people, so you have to know Chinese, right? But when you're talking to a Japanese, then you need to know Japanese, right? So different kind of usage, you will need to know its instructions. But in this language, in these workshops, we're going to use the C++ and Java program to share with you because C++ or Java, basically it is basic, the most basic concepts that you will need to know about the programming language. Concepts are the same, okay, but you just need to get yourself familiarized with it. So these are the basic structure of a C++ and also Java program. So Java program is about the object-oriented, probably you have actually heard before. And C++ can be object-oriented also. So first thing that you need to know is about the header and also the important libraries that you need for the language. So in C++, you will need the IO streams, and then you will need to have these using namespace std as a kind of a standard declarations in order to actually use the to actually code for the program. And these import Java lang. So these are the important libraries for Java. So in C++, you have a main. Okay, you have a main function. So same as the Java, you have a main functions also. But before you have the main functions, you have to declare an object for the program. Okay, for the code itself. So in these the simple programs. So what you can see over here is, you don't care about whether what is this, but if you look at it, probably you would rather guess that it is trying to find the maximum number between A and also the B. So somebody is actually turning on the mics. Okay, so you are actually comparing, okay, whether A and B, which one is actually larger. Okay, so now we go to the algorithms. So in previous, like in this, is actually trying to find the maximums, right? So how you do it? No, rather when you are actually solving a problem. So because when you are creating a program, means that you are solving a problem. So when you're solving a problem, so what do? You must do it step by steps, right? You cannot just simply go into the problem saying that okay, this how you do it, but then people will ask, what is this? So you do list out the steps. So you list out the steps step by step, the procedure, either a set of rules to follow to actually complete the specific task. So let's say you want to solve a problems So what you do. So step 1, what you do, step 2, what you do, step 3, what you do. So it's a rather clear steps on how to do it. It cannot it may not be a very big, but it can be, okay, at algorithms, okay, it can be a small procedure that solve a recurrent problem. So for this, okay, you will take in some values, because when you're doing some programs, of course, you're going to take in some inputs, right? So input, what is the input? Input is like, let's say you, before you actually log into a Facebook account, you will have the username and also password, right? So the username and the password that you key in is the input. Then it will give you some output. So what is the output? So after you log in, your personal posts, I mean, all the posts that's related to you is going to pop up, right? So these are the outputs that is actually given to you. Okay, so next is that to have an algorithm, okay, what is the important criteria? Because based on the steps, right? So it must be definiteness, which is a clear instructions that you give to people. So let's say people come and ask you, how to go to toilet? Sorry, how do you go to toilet? So you say, oh, you go straight and you turn left, then you just walk straight lah, then you can see then you can see the toilet. So is it very clear? No. So you must give a clear instruction saying that, okay, you go straight and turn left, turn right. Then there's a signboard over here. It's the toilet. So if you are a man, then you go to, there will be a man sign. That if you are a lady, then you will have a lady sign. So you can just use the toilet. So this is called a clear instruction, which is a definiteness. Then what about finiteness? Finiteness is that the algorithm must stop. Because if you are actually giving some instructions that you keep turning around, that is, there's no stopping. So of course, it is not a very good algorithms, right? And also effectiveness, which is the steps is just basic to be carried out. So let's say just now, the toilet examples. You go straight, go turn left and right, then turn left and right, turn left and right, then you left, then you turn right. So is it very long? So probably, the person, didn't manage to go to toilet, and something happened to the person. But if you just give enough steps, like straight, turn left, turn right, then you will get to the toilet. So it's a effectiveness. Then for runtime, because when you are actually running a program, so of course we are expecting to be fast, right? Or we would say a proper, right? Because sometimes when you turn on an application, it's probably like, hey, why so long? Okay, why it took about 5 minutes to load? So probably it is actually due to the runtime problem. So this is algorithms in the daily life. Okay, you can apply to daily life to fry an egg. Your mother probably fried an egg for you, but after this, you can try to fry an egg for yourself by following these instructions. Instructions to fry an egg. So you can try to test whether this algorithm, is it going to work on you to fry an egg or not. So if not, then you try to modify your own ways to actually fry the egg. Okay. So I'll not rather explain it clear it over here, but I would rather, okay, explain it more clear in this algorithm. So this algorithm is a swap algorithm. So why it is a swap algorithm? Because let's say the examples here is that before swap, we have x equals to 1 and y equals to 2. So now I want to swap x to become 2 and y to become 1. But how do you actually do it? There are 3 steps that is given over here. So the first step is, so imagine that x is equals to 1, that y is equals to 2. Then we'll have we create a new, okay, a new variables that was going to help me to store the values of x first. Okay, because now I'm trying to replace the x with y. So I need to have a temporary, okay, I mean, we would rather say, probably you can think of like a temporary x to store my x, because later I'm going to replace my y with the x, right? So temporary x, equals to 1, then you have temporary will be equals to 1. Then from here, okay, since now my x, I already have temporary equals to 1, right? Then I just replace my x to be equals to y. So my x now will become to 2. But now is that when you come to y, so y is now you want to become, you need to turn it into 1, right? So you cannot just refer to the x because x has already turned into 2. So what you do, you refer to the temp. So these temporary, because previously in step 1, you have replaced it with the values of x. So now what you do is you can just, equals to the temporary value. So now your y has become 1. So in this case, you have successfully swapped the value x to be equals to and y to be equals to 1. So from the algorithms, you can see here all these are actually codes, right? Because sometimes people, it's actually you need to describe. Okay, you need to describe, but you cannot just write an essay because the essay is like paragraph by paragraph, right? So here you're going to use a pseudocode to give a high level of descriptions of how your program is going to work like. But of course, with step by steps. So how do you actually write it? So probably you can, further get to know about it by checking out yourself. All right. So next we go to variables. So what is variables is actually for? So variable is the names given to the computer memory locations which are used to store a values in a computer program. So like just now, if you look back into this, we have the variables. So x, y, and temp, these are we call variables. So you put in the values of 1 and 2, right? So in here, if you didn't put x to be equals to 1, so means that there is nowhere that you will know that what is 1 and what is 2. So that's why you need something else to carry the value of 1 and also the values of 2. So in this case, x, y, and temp is, we call it as the variables. So each of these variable is actually, you will need the computer memories to actually store it. So C++ and Java is a strongly typed programming language because every variable must be declared with a data type. So this is very important, right? Because in this world, okay, we have different kind of, we would say like numbers. In numbers, you would have decimal points and those values with non-decimal points. So here you have to differentiate it clearly, whether this value is a decimal point or it's not. Decimal point means a 小数点. So 你必须要清楚的知道你要用的那个value 是有小数点还是没有小数点. So this is a number. Okay, it's actually group it to number. Next is you have to group it to characters. Character means like A, B, C, D. This is our characters. But with these characters, you can form sentence. Right. So you have to differentiate when you are actually using data types. You have to differentiate all these clearly. But of course, if you have learned Python before, so you don't need to do that, right? So the Python itself would know what is the type itself. And therefore, the types of variable need to be specified explicitly. So we have different kinds of data types. That you have primitive data types and you have non-primitive data type. So primitive data types are built-in data types by the programming language itself, and non-primitive is a user-defined data type that programmer itself would actually, give you provide the choice. Okay, next is examples. So these are the examples that we have for the C++ and Java. So first is the integer. So integer, we would say that the whole number, floating point, So floating point basically is the same as a double floating point, which is for a decimal value, but it's just that the size that is to store the decimal value, it would be different. So for floating point, it's actually store 6 to 7 decimal digits, and the double store up to 15 or 16 decimal digits. For Boolean, okay, it's actually true or false. And for character, it's to store a single character. String is a sort of sequence of characters. So in integer, okay, the examples for integer, like let's say the number of students. So 比如说好像人数 you cannot say 我有30.5的人，OK 没有半个人的嘛，是不是只有30个人或者是31个人？So in when you have these, so you're going to use the integer. Then we come to floating point and also double. So these are for decimals, 就是 for 小数点的，就是说你去买 KFC，当然人会跟你讲说哦10块半，对吧？ So 你有那个小数点。So when you have these, so you're going to use a floating point and also double floating point. Then Boolean. Boolean is either true or false, 就是对或者是错。然后比如说跟你讲说你I mean 对或者是错啦哈。So for character, for character is like the grade of an exam. So 你考，比如说华语，你拿到什么？我拿到 A， 我是 B， 我是 C。So these are the double code. All right. So next is, so when you're creating a program, so we kind of had input and also the output. So input, just now as I said, I've given you the examples of Facebook, the username and password when you key in. Okay, these are the inputs that you provide. Then the output is the polls. Okay, it would go and check whether you have matched with the password. Then it will provide you with the output. So for the output, okay, for the C++, I mean, this is a simpler one, but if you test it yourself already, then you will know that cout basically is an object. Okay, it's an object in the IOStream library together with the insertion operators to output the values of print the text. So this is a cout instruction. So if you want to print a message which is called hello world, so what you do is cout and two arrows, which we call as the insertion operators. Then you, because this is a string type, so you need to put a double quote. Then you have hello. Next is that you go to the world. So for this, next is the end line. So end line means that it's trying to display the new line. So for this new line, what is it is that because you want to actually go down into the next line, right? So what you do is you put the end line over here. So you can see the examples. The first example is without the end line. So what happened is you just skip continue to display. But when you put the end line, so it means that you will go to the new line. So for the Java, okay, Java, instead of using cout or an end line, so you need to use like print lines, and also the print app. So what is mean by print? So print is just this is a instructions for the Java. It's system.out.print. So just print it out. But if you want to print it to the next line, so rather using end line. So end line is a C++, right? So use a print line over here. Then you go to the next line. Okay, next is the print app. So what is print app is print with format, with a certain kind of format. So these are the instructions that you give for the Java to actually print out with the kind of format that you want. So when we talk about the format, so these are different kinds of the format that you can apply for the Java in order to print it out. So I will not rather explain one by one, so you can explore it yourself. So flag, okay, is also the same thing, similar to the output for the Java. that different kind of instructions that you give, okay, to actually print it out for the format. So you can see this is all the examples that's provided over here. Okay, next we go to the input. Just now we are talking about the outputs. Right now it would be the input. So for input, okay, rather than using the insertion operators, we're going to use the extraction operators. So here is difference, okay, for C++ and so Java lab. So for C++, this is, you need to declare the variable first. Then you see out, okay, to ask the person that what is your name. So then you have C in. So C in with the name, okay, C in, just now this one is the insertions. Right now C in is an extraction. So extraction means that you extract the information from the user. So from the values that is keyed in by the user. So the value, so let's say here you key in John. So this John will store into the variable, which is what we call name. Okay, this is a name that you actually given, you declare it. So you're going to put the name, the John into the name over here. So when you display it out, so you can get the John. Then we come to the Java. So Java is you're going to rather than using Cin in the C++, so you use as a scanner. So from here, you need to use a package, which is called Java util package, okay, scanner. So you need to import the package in first. Then you need to create the object. So how does it work is, you already import the libraries in, right? So you just put a scanner, then my object. So my object is the name of scanners that you create for the user to key in. So you give a new scanner, so system.in. Okay, this system.in is to actually actually ask the user to give some input. Then of course, okay, you need to ask the output. You need to ask the user that what is your name. Then you base on the objects, okay, the scanners that you create, which is my object. Then you ask the user to key in dot next line. So these are functions to ask the user to actually key in the value. And of course, you print it out. So you can see that when you see out, okay, rather that's the difference. So here is C out and you put a double quote, right? So this double quote is the output. Then because this name, okay, this name, it can be any, okay, it can be random names that the user key in. So rather than put it in the double quote, okay, you put it outside. But in order to put it outside, so you need the insertion operators. So, but for Java, okay, you put it inside the brackets, which are double quotes. Then you use a plus symbol to concatenate the name, okay, this name with the name that the user typed in. Okay, so these are the inputs types, because different kind of inputs, you will need to have different kinds of input to different kind of functions from the for Java. So if you are actually reading a Boolean value, so you need to have a next Boolean. But if you are reading, for example, like if you're reading a long value, so you use a next long. So these are the example of a complete program that, so for example here, it is actually asking the user to key in the name, the age. So what you do is, first you declare the library. So these are the important libraries. So in C++, if you want the user to key in like name, so name, we would rather say that treat it as a sentence. So because it's as a space. So what you need to do is you need to use the get line. So these are the functions that is actually available in the string. So without this string, you cannot use this get line. And next, if you go to the age, so age is the integer type. So you use the integer and you ask the user to see in, then you see out. So for the Java, is that, I know it's actually similar, but it's just that you need to declare the scanner or the objects and name and the age for the variables. Then you ask the user to enter the name. So different kind. So you can see here is my object next line, and here is my object next integer values, right? So these are for we would say sentence, and these are for integers. So it would be different. Okay, so next we go to the control structure. So what is a control structure needs? Because those examples that we show you previously here is rather, we would say that in sequence means that it's in one line. One line means that there is no decisions that is being made, right? So you would actually, when you're doing the program, so you have to make some decisions, whether you fulfill the decisions or not, so that you can actually run the program. So how do you actually do it? You will need to have a condition to be expressed in a way that the computer can understand. So how do you actually do it? We'll talk about it later. So a conditions we would rather say as a logical expressions, because when you are actually solving, creating a program, or when you're solving a problem, you must do it in a logical way, right? So you must understand that you must do it in a logical way, or you would say that in a common sense way. So for example, okay, very simple, when you log into the Facebook, the username and also the password, it must be the same. Okay, it must match with both, then only you can log in, right? But if let's say it's not working in a logical way, it's not in a common sense way, that uh either one, okay, either a username or password correct, then you can log in already. So is this actually making sense? No, right? Because the password and also username must be the same, then only you can log in. So it's that way will be in logical sense. But if either one is correct, then you can log in already. So it's not in logic. Okay, so this isn't logical, but of course, in the problem, we not only have a username as a password, right? We have different kind of problems. So you must make sure that the conditions that you set is in logical expression. So it's either this condition, it must be true or false. So what does it mean? So let's say the password and also the username must be true. Okay, it's an and. Okay, it must be true. Then only this whole thing is considered as correct. Then you would say that this condition is a true condition. Well, of course, in here you make the comparisons, right? Because either true or false, you're actually making a comparisons. So these are the possible flow, which is in one way or two ways, where you have one. If it is true, then you go into one statement. False, then you just proceed. But in here, if it is true, then you do it this statement one. But if it's false, then you go to the statement two. So how do you design it? It's rather depends on the programmers. So you are the one that's, I mean, if you are interested in to become a programmer, so you have to decide on how do you design it. So for example, here, one way selection. So let's say this is a scenario or the conditions that you give. If a score is greater or equals to 90, then the grade would be A. When we look at the two-way selections, if and else. If it's not this, then you have another kind of a selection. If more than 200, so you get a 20% discount. Else, you only get 10% discount. So these are the examples for you to understand it in words. Okay, so now these, when we talk about comparisons, right, we will go into the relational operators. So these relational operators for you to actually make the compare. So you have different kind of conditions, but I think this is, you are familiar with it because in our daily lives, we have many comparisons. For example, equal to, if the score is equals to 100, means that the score is really 100, means that it's really true, right? then it will say that bravo, full score. But if it's not 100, okay, it is maybe 50, 40s, then it will not display the bravo full score. So if we go to the next one, is not equal to. So if it's not equals to weekend, then you have to study. Today is Monday. Okay, it's not a weekend, so you have to study. Here, day. Day equals to Monday. Monday is not weekend, right? So it means that the condition is true. So we study. But if it is a Sunday, so Sunday is actually weekend, right? So it means that it is actually a false. It's a false conditions, then you don't need to study, so you just probably you play games. Okay, then next, it is actually less than. Okay, so if let's say you're also not probably you're not study, then if your score is less than 40, then you fail the test. So let's say you score 28, means that you fail the test, right? Because it is less than 40. But if you study a little bit, then your score is actually equals to 60. So 60 here is larger than 40, right? So means that you pass the test off. Okay, you don't fail the test. Okay, next is the less than or equals to. So because I guess some of you, and if you're not MCO, probably you go to some theme park. So if your height, okay, is less than 100 or equal to 135. So because probably your height is 135, so means that you're not allowed for the roller coaster. So if your height is 128, so you are not allowed for roller coaster. But if you are 170, so 170 is a false conditions, right? Because it's actually greater than 135. So it means that you are allowed for the roller coaster. So next is greater than. So greater than, if let's say the price, okay, is greater than 199, then you get 20% discount. So let's say the price, if you have 198, then it is a false conditions, means that you're not going to get your 20% discount. So next is greater than or equal to. It is a score. So if you have greater than or equals to 90, so like example here, 95, then you have A plus. But if you are less than, okay, 90, then your grade is not A plus. So here is that you have more than one expressions that you need to compare. So it means that it must be an and, or it can be an or. So here if it is greater than 0 or less than 40, you fail the test. Because sometimes people like to, what if the user key in negative value or 110? So these are the conditions that you must check. Next is the or. Okay, if it is Sunday or it is Saturday, then it's a weekend. Okay, you don't say that Sunday. Of course, you say Sunday and Saturday is a weekend also. But you can, if let's say you want to check whether Sunday or Saturday is it a weekend, then you can use the or value. So from here, okay, you can use a logical operator. So just now is a relational operators, right, when you're comparing. So now is logical operators to compare two conditions. So these relational operators is a condition itself, and logical operators is between two conditions. So in here, the first operators we look at is the exclamation mark. So the exclamation mark is about not. Means that whatever conditions that you do, you make it an inverse. So let's say the score here, we have 70. So 70, when you put it over here, it is a false conditions, right? So let's say here, okay, this one itself, if you put as a 70, then means that it is a false conditions. Okay, but if you put exclamation marks over here, so exclamation marks, okay, are false, then it will become true. So it means that if a user key the 70, but it's less than 40, even though this is false, but you put exclamation marks, then the whole conditions will be true conditions as well. So this is the things that you would actually take note. Probably be asked, when am I going to use this? So you will know when are you going to use this when you face the conditions. All right, so next is the and. So the and, how do you do it? And you use a 2 ampersand sign. So it's a 2 and sign. So here you check, okay, is the score, because when you're talking about A minus, it's between 75 and also 79, right? 80 is not considered as A minus, it's considered as A already. So you need to check properly, put in the relational operators properly, that it is equals to 75, greater than or equals 75, and in between 79. And okay, if both conditions is actually true, then only you consider it as A minus. So you don't put all, right? Because if all, if you put 90, so 90 and it's a all, so of course this will be true. So it's wrong already. So now if you look at the all, okay, all is what? Two straight line. So here is you check if a day is a Sunday or it is a Saturday, then it's a weekend. But of course, if we key in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so then it's not. Okay, these are the things that you need to know, that if for the and, both conditions must be true, then only everything will be true. Else everything will be false, because either one condition is false, then it is false already. So here is true. So both conditions must be false, then will be false. So either one is true, that it would be true. So of course, when you do it with the conditions, you have to follow the orders. It's rather complicated that you need to follow this order. That how do you actually follow this order? With if let's say you have multiply, divide, and modulus, so you will do it in a second. So plus minus is a third, and all these you follow. So let's say, okay, we straight away follow in the examples here. You have all and also the relational operators, right? So this is the logic operator. So which one comes first? So if you look at this, so if this, okay, this one is compared with this one. So which one? Of course, it's this, right? Because this is in the 4 and this is 7. So what you do, you come down here, you do 11, is it greater than 5? Yes, this is true. So this one, leave it first. Then you check, continue to check this. So is it true? Yes. And this one, is it true? No. Is it false? Then only you come down. So now you are actually comparing this with this. So which one first? Of course, it's this one, right? So this one, so it's the and also the or. So you compare the and first, then only you compare the or. So at the end, you get it as a true. So next we go into this. So this one is also, including what we call probably mathematical operators. So from here, we have plus, we have multiply. So which one? So of course, it's a multiply first, right? Because it's the second, and plus, okay, it's the third. So we come down, okay, so we do it this multiply first, then only we do it with plus. Okay, then follow the sequence that 4, then 6 and 7. So these are the sequence that you will need to take notes when a condition is actually given to you. Okay, so the selection, so selections, now we are actually doing it in the coding. So we code it into a program. So this one is that we are actually checking on the grade. So we check whether the marks in 80 marks, it's falling into which one. So here, if you're checking with the comparison, so if you compare it here, 80, yes, it is greater than, but it's less than 50. So of course, this is actually false. So when you're not looking at this, so you go to the next one, because there's always an option that you provide when you are actually making a decision. So it's not a second one, it's not the third one, but it will be the last one, which is a grade A, because it does not fulfill the second and also the third conditions. Then it's only have the last one. So you go into the A. Well, when we look at the Java, it's also rather, it's basically quite similar, but it's just that when you see out, okay, the instructions is different. Okay, so next is it's a nested, okay, nested if. Just now is that you have one straight line. Okay, I mean, it's not a nested, right? So here is that you're doing if is inside a if. Okay, it's okay. So first thing is that you just want to check whether the user key in the correct value or not. Because if let's say user key in a negative value or the value which is greater than 100, then you don't allow to proceed. You say that it's an invalid value. But if the user key in a proper value, then you proceed and check which grade it is. Okay, so next we have a way if and else. So there's another way for to check the conditions also is a switch. So switch, okay, if let's say provide you with a grade, which is F, then you can see out what is the value of F. So if you check on the F is between 0 and 49. So these are the case that is relate to the grade that you provide. Okay, so what you can say that what is the difference between if else and also switch? So we would rather say that if else is for calculation choices and comparisons which value in range. Okay, remember that it's comparisons of value in range, but for switch is only for choice. You are actually unable to compute the comparisons in range. So let's say these are examples because you're comparing in range, right? Range means that from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 until 100. But for switch, you cannot do it like this. Okay, you can't only do it in the examples that shown in here. That it is, with a choices. Okay, not in range. So this is not allowed. All right. So now we go to the repetitions, which is actually the loop. So for repetitions means that you're creating a repeating sessions. So the example very simple that when you are actually key in a value. Okay, when you're doing some, let's say you, so when you I mean when you log in, so you log in, log out, log in, log out, log in, log out. So these are the repeat things that you actually do, right? Because you cannot just say after you log in and after you log out, then you just close the program. No, you can allow the user to keep log in, log out, log in, log out. So these are the repeat things. So how do you actually do it? So let's say, for example, okay, these are rather simple examples that you have 10. So you're trying to see out or display the message 10 times. So you cannot just type 10 times, right? So what you can do, you can just do it in a repetition way. So here is that you're going to use the for loop. But how does it work? Okay, later we'll have it. And this one is you are trying to key in the total values, 5 numbers. So if you are not using a repetition way, so you just need to uh, do it 5 times. But if imagine that your boss asks you to create a program that to key in 100 times, do you think that you will key in 100 times? No, of course, because this is not effective enough. So what you do, use a repetition way, okay, to keep asking the user to uh, key in. So there are actually 3 ways of repetitions, which is a while loop, do while, and also the for loop. So for the for loop, okay, you have to do it like this. So this while loop is basically a keyword, and the bracket over here is rather we save as this is a reserved word. Okay, the bracket over here is the conditions. So which means that when you are doing it, the condition is must be true. Then only you will repeat the whole things, right? So these conditions is what we say as a decision maker, and usually with a logical expressions. So just now we have mentioned about the logical expressions, right? And also you're going to use the relational operators to do it. So in here, okay, once this condition is actually true, okay, 是对的, then only you will repeat. Okay, so for example here, comparing between the C++ version and also the Java versions, is more or less the same. It's just that the C out, it is actually different. So from here, a simple example is that you need to print number 1 to 10. So what you do, first you declare a variable which is I equals to 1. So when you come in here, okay, what you do, you check the condition. You check this whether is it correct or not. Because this one is actually false, then you don't print, you don't execute this whole thing anymore. So 1 now is what? I is 1. Is it true? Yes, it is actually true, right? Because 1 is less than or equals to 10. So you come in. So you see out the 1 here. Then UI plus plus. So this is the unary operators, which is a short form for I, okay, equals to I plus with 1. So here you increase by 1. So when you increase by 1 now means that your I will become 2. So when you actually become 2, what you do is you go back, okay, you check again. So is it 2 less than or equals to 10? Yes, this is true. So you come in, then you see out over here. Then you plus again. So this one will repeat again and again and again until your I, okay, become 11. So when it actually become 11 means that it's false already, right? Because it's already greater than the 10. So when this actually become false, what happens? It will quit the loop. So next, if we go to the do while. Okay, do while, you can see, both also got while. So what is the difference between do while and also the while? So it's actually similar, but it's just that the do while, it will execute at least for one time. So how does it actually looks like? So it looks like this. So just now, okay, you have the int I equals to 1, right? So you come in. So you do. Do you check the condition? No, you don't check the condition. You come in first. Then you see out first, then you plus 1, then only you check the condition. So but just now while is different, right? Just now for the while is you need to check first, then only you see out. But here, no, see out first, then only you check. So this is the difference between the while and also the do while. Okay, next is that we go to the for loops. So this is another way of, uh, looping. So another way of looping is that first you need to have four things that you need to look at: initialization, conditions, and also the update. So initializations means that you need to provide an initial value first. Then you check with the condition. So just now, while and do while you check with conditions, right? For for loop, you also need to check the conditions, and then you need to update also. Okay, you have to plus by 1 to actually fulfill the conditions over here. So these are examples. Okay, it's also to print out the numbers from 1 to 10. But how do you do it? This. So here is that you initialize. So this is a step 1. And after you initialize I to be equals to 1, right? Then you need to check the condition, which is a step 2. So you need to make sure that your I is less than 10. So 1 is less than 10, yes. So what happened? You go into the for loop and you actually run on the statement. So that is a step 3. Then only you come back out. So after you have run the statement, then you come out and you check. You plus the I with 1. That is the step 4. So from here, what you do, you go back to the step 2. You check the conditions. So this one will only happen when it's actually in the first time. So when you repeat it, you have to check with the conditions. So instead of going into the initializations, you follow back into the step 2. Okay, so repetitions, of course, with different types of control. Because the while loop, you can keep repeating, right? But there's one day that you're going to stop the loop. How? Three things. So the first is the counter control loop. So this counter control loop is depends on how many times that you want to stop. So in over here, you set it as 10 times. So these are called as a counter control. So it means that when you reach 11, automatically this loop will stop. Right, next is a sentinel control. So for sentinel control, it is based on the user to terminate the loops, because sometimes you don't know, right? I mean, how many times that you're going to run the loop. So you just key in a value to stop it. I mean, to just make the conditions to become false. So like the examples here is to ask a user to key in a positive number and to stop. So you just enter this. So when the user enters the value, so as long as it is not negative 999, so which means that this is a true conditions, then it will keep continue to loop. But once the user enter negative 999, then this will become false, so it will stop. So you have to understand that, I mean, in this sentinel control, you just ask the user to key in the value just to stop it. That's all, just to make the conditions false. So like for example, so you key in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, no, until 10. So once the user key in this, that means that it's actually stop, right? So it's a false, then from there it will stop and give you the calculations for the total number. Because from here, when the user key in the value, so you calculate the total number as well. Okay, for next is the flat control. So for the flat control is a Boolean, so true or false. So you check, just now is you based on the conditions, right? But now you are using true or false. So for true or false is based on negative value. So if the value set key in is less than 0, then you give it as a false. So once over here the values is actually false, then you skip the loop. So this is an example for Java. Okay, so these are the sample outputs. Okay, next we go to the break and continue. So break, that's the difference. Because if let's say you want to stop the loop suddenly, because suddenly you want to stop the loop because it doesn't fulfill the condition anymore, you can use break and continue. So for break is to exit early, okay, eliminate everything. So how does it actually work? So this is the example that provided. So if the I is actually equals to 5, so it breaks. Break means that it's actually stopping from the whole for loop. So you can see that the output, when it's actually reaching 4, okay, it still goes. Then when I is actually equals to 5, so it will check these conditions. So once it's actually fulfilled these conditions to be true, then it will break the whole loop. But when we look at the continue, what happens? So the continue would rather just skip one iteration. So if you look at the examples here, you can see here there's no 5, right? So where is 5? So 5 is not being C out. Why? Because of the continue here. Because once the continue is being executed, so it doesn't C out, but it goes up, okay, and repeat again. So your I will become 6. So when we check with the conditions here, 6 is still less than 10. So if you come to the if 6, okay, definitely not equals to 5, right? So it's a false. So it doesn't execute continue, but it will continue to see out. Okay, this arrow is here. Okay, so it will continue to see out. So this is the difference between the break and also continue. So I guess some of you would, confused, but this is just a simple definition. So if you want to further know more, so you have to, learn it yourself. Okay, so then, okay, we have this for loop. For loop is a nested one. So if you want to create, for example, if you want to create a shape like this, then you will use two for loop. Just now we have if, nested if, right? You have if inside the if. So it's the same for. You can have for inside the for. So how do you do it? Okay, you can actually think about it. So here is just that, if you want to choose a right looping structure, because you have do while, and also for. So you need to think, okay, which one is suitable for you. So if you know in advance the number of repetitions, so you know that it's going to repeat for 10 times, so you can use the for loop. But you don't know how many times, then you use a while loop. But you don't know, okay, you can not determine, but you know that at least there'll be one loop that you need to do it. Then you use the do while loop. Okay. So next we go to the array. Array, okay, array is what? Array, we will later say that is a collection of related data items of the same data type. Because when you are actually doing, okay, your programs, you don't just store only one values. There will be a groups of values that you need to store it, and this group of value, we would say that is in the same group. So for example, you are collecting the heights of the students in the class. So these are the height is actually a group of the people, the height of a group of the people. So what you do is you use array to do it in a collections. So what you do is you arrange them in the groups in a consecutive memory cell. So it would be something like this. So int, okay, num, and you put it as a square box, which is 5. Then uh, curly brackets. So in a sequence that 23, 56, 2, 8, and 17. So from here is, if you look at the illustrations, that it would rather in column types, that 23, 56, 2, 8, and 17. So how do you determine the locations for each of these number is using index value. So if we go to the 23, okay, 23 is actually stored in the num, and the location in the num is referring as 0. Then if you look at, let's say the 8 in this num, so you have it as the location as 3. So all of these number follow in sequence. This is what we call as index. All right. So in here, this is a sample. So just now we have a samples that calculate the total values, right? So here we have stored it in, we have actually stored it in the different variables. So this one would rather, we say that it would rather be long, but we don't want. So we just stored it in an array. So we put it in, in following the sequence. So this is the first number, second, third, fourth, and fifth numbers. And the type, okay, we given the variable type, it would be a double as well. So all these number is stored in the marks. And what you do, you want to calculate the total, right? So you plus the number one by one. So how do you go in? How do you plus it one by one? Using the index value. So you go from one index to another index. So if I do an illustration, it's like you go from marks, okay, 0. After you plus this, right? So you go in, then you change into this, okay, then it will become 1. So of course, this one you later you change it to 2, then you change it to 3. So it means that you're changing the index value to control your array. Then that is how you calculate the total. So after that, of course, average, you get a total, then you divide it with 5. So in this case, okay, it is actually possible for you to store any data types. Like if you want to store a string or you want to store a character, is also uh, allowed. Okay, it's also okay. So here is that different kind of declarations for the array, but it's just that for C++, you just need to remember that you have variables and you need to have a data types. And this is the size of the array. So, but for Java, okay, int and the square box, then this is a variable name. But to define the size, so you have to put it in equals the new int5. So next is the you want to do the initializations. So it means that when you're doing the declarations, you assigned a value into the array. So you do it something like this: a square when we say curly brackets, curly parentheses, then open and close. So these are the number followed in sequence. Then you put it in the num. Next is, so you can see that here you do the initializations as well, and you define the data types, but you did not define the size. Is it okay? Yes, it is okay. So here is you are giving assign the size, but here if you are not putting the size in, what the compiler would do is it will calculate from the values that you initialize. So here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So here we have 6. So means that the compiler automatically would know that this num2, okay, the size is actually 6. Okay, so for Java, that is actually safe, but it's just that the positions of a bracket would be different. So next is would be num. Okay, num3. So this is a size of 10, but you put it as a 0. So we would say that when you do it as a 0, so means you are actually initialize everything into a 0 value. Then next, if we look at the double, okay, num with a size of 5. So here you only initialize it to 3 numbers. But of course, the rest, you still have 2, right? Because the size is 5. Then you would actually, the rest would be a 0 value. So to access, okay, an element in array on how to you access index. Index and also for loop, right? Why? Because why is the index and also for loop? So because, okay, you see here, if you want to, just now as I explained, if you want to go to 23, the locations with the index is 0. So for 8, it's actually 3. So you go from 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you use the loop, okay, to access from one to another one. So examples here that we have is the for loop, okay, with the for loop here, because you're going to change, you change the index value inside the brackets here. You control the index value. All right. How do you control? Using the for loop. Okay, so next, if we look at this, okay, these examples here, is we are trying to, see out whether is it an odd value or not. So from here, you use the for loop. Okay, you go from one numbers to another numbers. So you check if it is an odd number because you're going to get the remainder as 1, right? So then you see out. So these are the odd numbers that you actually see out. So remember array, looping, and also the index. So you don't have to, you don't confuse with the elements and also the index value. So here is, let's say you're doing it like tests and then you want. So what is this? You are actually extracting the value of tests. So let's say the value is 22. If you put in plus plus means that you are actually 22 plus with 1, it is 23. But if you're doing something like this, it is rather that 6 plus with 1, which is 20, which is actually 7. So it means that you are extracting the 7th, okay, the 7th value. All right. So for the assignment, okay, for the assignment is that because sometimes you're going to copy from one to another, right? So you cannot just use the equal sign to copy one array to another array, but you need to use the for loop and also the index to control, copy one by one. So let's say you have these two arrays. Okay, let me draw it out. Okay, so here, okay, so if let's say here 1, 2, 3, 4. So now you want to copy the 1 into this, 2 here, 3, and also the 4, right? So you cannot just use the equal sign because imagine that this is a new test, okay, and this is actually the test. You cannot just put the equal. No, you cannot. So what you do, use the for loop. one by one. Okay, first for loop, okay, you copy 1. Second for loop, you copy 2. Third for loop, you copy 3. For loop, you copy 4. So this is actually the way. So probably you think, hey, why cannot? So I leave the answer for you to check it out. Okay, next is the two-dimensional arrays. So for the two-dimensional, it's like a table. So a table, I mean, you know about table, right? So how do you actually make the array to look like table? So you have these two square brackets. So one is actually the rows and another one is a column. So the first one is we always represent it with a rows and second one is always represented with a column. So how does it actually looks like if we have 4 rows and we have 3 columns? So it's going to look something like this. All right. So I mean, it's similar to the one-dimensional array. Okay, if let's say the one-dimensional array is a table, so probably it's going to look something a table like this. All right, so let's say you put it as index 0, so it's actually index 1, and then you have index 2, something like this. But if there's a two-dimensional array, so it would rather look something like this. Of course, you have to take control on the table also, right? It also depends on the index. So let's say here, if you are looking at the 2, 2, so it means if this is how many third columns is in, the third rows and also third columns are, but the index is 2, 2, because array always starts with 0. Okay, then it always ends with n minus 1. So just need to remember, okay, to access to the array, for loops, and also the index. So now if let's say you are actually trying to initialize the values of 84, 78, 92, and 97 into a two-dimensional array. So this would be what is it actually looks like. But if you look at this, the way of writing it is, so just now in one-dimensional array, okay, you put it as 1, 2, 4, something like this, right? But here, because you are going to put it in 2 rows and 2 columns, so the first row, okay, you would put I mean, for the big whole thing, you put it curly brackets is outside. But when you are going into the rows by rows, what you do is you do a bracket for the rows itself. Then go into another rows, right? So this is how you do it. Okay, this is a more values, which is 5 rows and 5 columns. So I'm not going into it, but would say that if you are trying to sum the array elements, so you are going to use a double for loops. All right. So this is another examples over here. Okay, so of course that's not limited just to 2 dimensions. It can be 3 and 4, though it can be higher dimensions. So how probably we think that why do we need 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions? So probably when time comes, you would know which dimension that you're going to use. So these are the reference for the content of a slide. But before I actually end this, I want to introduce you to a website that is probably useful for you to learn further on the programming. So these are, can you all see the websites that I share to you? Can you all see the page?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So this is actually websites that you can just simply, Google. Okay, so you just type Python tutor. Okay, you just can click on this, whether you open this, or if let's say you want to learn C++, so you just open this. Wait, let me, because I cannot see this. Okay, something like this up. So, okay, you just use this and you just click on the C++ tutor. So just click on it. If you want Java, so you can choose on the Java. If you want Python 2 or Python 3, because there are different versions of Pythons, right? So just use this. Then you type your code over here. So this is the example codes. If let's say, okay, I just show you one more time how to. So if let's say this is a code that I have. And I want to actually look at what is actually happening in the code over here. Okay, what you do is after you paste your code over here, then you visualize it. So you wait, okay, for some time. Okay, then you can see something like this. So if you click on the next button, so you can see that this is how your PC work at the back. Okay, so if you click on next, then when you declare your variables here, you can see that we have a stack is under the stack. So these are the variables that you created with the memories in your PC. So you have num1, num2, and also sum. So here is that you have assigned the values of 5 into num1, right? So you can see that num1 is actually 5. So when you do it, that in line number 8, if you click on next, you get 12.5, but it's just 12. Why? Because the variables that you declare is only int. So int is only for the values that is not decimal values. So you can see that when you assign it, you get 12. Then if you click on the next, which is going to line number 10, it is actually plussing two numbers, right? So you plus 5 and also 12. So you get the sum values of 17. So when you see out, you get the output over here. So this one, okay, it would be rather useful. Okay, if you look at the array examples from here, okay, if you paste it, okay, just I think we'll end it in 5 more minutes. So just this is the examples. Okay, one thing, okay, you can see that this is examples. So we have a size of 10. So here you initialize it to 0, right? So what happened is that all values is going to be 0. So you are actually naming it in the list, and this is a group. So now is that you assigned list 3 to be 10. So here it is 10. Then list 6, it is 35. So now you're going to plus 3 and also the 6 and assign it into 45. So when you run, click on the next button. This is what you're going to get. Okay, so this is a website that probably would be useful to you, okay, on how your code is actually running. So I have Java, Python, okay, if you're interested with it, so you can actually use it. All right, so that's the basic introductions for you today. So I would pass this back to the floor. So thank you.
OK，Thank you， 谢谢我们的Joi San老师啊，给我们做了近1个半小时的分享啊。